Caught cheating wife in front our newborn baby. I made sure she never has a career ever again.
Parenthood truly brings surprises, doesn't it? Today on Our Space, who knew baby monitors had such a revealing adult supervision feature? Our baby monitor exposed my wife's cheating in high definition. I destroyed her career for it. I, 35 male, and my wife, 33 female, have been married for almost 7 years now. We met at a local fair. I asked her out, and things basically took off from there. It's been a good relationship and a good marriage, and we have our ups and downs like every other couple, but generally speaking, we have a very wholesome relationship, and I've always been very thankful for it. We weren't trying for a child for a pretty long time because we wanted to make the most out of our relative youth while we still had it. But last year, we decided to change things up. My wife, let's call her Naomi, got pregnant, and we had our baby at the beginning of the year. I've always wanted to have a kid, so when my daughter was born, it was genuinely the happiest moment of my life. There's nothing that I can say to describe it beyond that. Adjusting to parenthood is hard though, and it became pretty clear how much it ties up your life. If you don't have dependable friends or family around, it becomes really hard to have a day to yourself unless you're open to paying a nanny to take care of your kid. That was an expense that me and my wife really can't take on, so we passed on that. But anyways, it was clear that if we wanted to go out to eat at a restaurant, we would need to arrange with someone to watch the baby, and it really wasn't that easy since we don't have many family members living close by. I'm not complaining, I'm just explaining how things were. It was because of the way things were that I decided that we needed to get a baby monitor. If the baby was sleeping, as babies tend to do for very long times at a go, we could potentially go somewhere extremely close by and rush back if the baby started to stir or wake up. I know on paper it sounds irresponsible, but honestly, not having any spontaneity was starting to weigh on us. I discussed it with my wife and she was apprehensive about us leaving the baby at home for extended periods, but I told her that we would never go hang out anywhere that was more than a 5-minute walk from our place. Ultimately, we left the decision hanging and I expected that we were going to talk about it again at some point. Naomi works at a place of her own on the corner of our street, selling flowers and floral arrangements. She's always been a creative type and she has always loved flowers, so I basically lent her the empty store, which my uncle left to me after passing away from cancer, to use rent-free. I had no idea what I was going to do with it, and her having such a well-located store was definitely going to be to both our benefit. She has a couple of girls who work for her, so she doesn't always go to work, but she does on most days. I work remotely, so it works perfectly for us. On one of those days that she did, I decided to buy a Wi-Fi baby monitor on Amazon on a whim. I did recognize before I purchased it that we hadn't both concluded and agreed on getting it, but it really felt like winning her over wasn't going to be some kind of big ordeal. It came the next day when she was at work again, so I set up the little camera in our baby's room. If the lights are on, it's very easy to notice, but when the blinds are drawn or the light is off, it's not that easy to see it. The camera connects to the Wi-Fi, and I can use an app on my phone to check the monitor no matter where I am, which is pretty cool. After setting it up, I went right back to work, and honestly, I somehow forgot to tell her about it when she got back. The very next day was one of those few days where I had a bunch of errands to run, and I kind of looked forward to it because it was one of the times where I was entirely free of parental duties, even if just for a few hours at a time. When I was about to leave the house, my wife begged that I take the baby along, that she was exhausted from the week and she just needed to have some time to herself. I won't lie, I was a bit bummed at that, but this wasn't the first time that she asked me to take the baby along, and I wasn't able to the last time she asked, so this time around, I agreed. I took my daughter and all of her needed things and started to run the errands for the day. I was halfway through the list of things that I was meant to do that day, and my daughter had been well behaved the entire day, so it honestly wasn't a bad day by any measure. Well, until a point. It was when I was sitting in my car eating some fast food that I had bought that I got a notification on my phone from the baby monitor app. It had detected activity, and my first thought was that my wife went into the baby's room to do something because that's the logical assumption to make. I pulled out my phone and opened the app, and I saw my wife and another man grappling in the baby's room. My heart leaped in my chest, honestly. It looked like my wife was being assaulted by this man, and I can't describe how quickly I switched on the car. The only thing was that I started to hear sounds, and that was when I realized that my wife was far from being assaulted. It became clear that this man and my wife were making out in my daughter's room. Looking back, I'm still shocked at how rapidly my concern for her turned to a fiery hate, but I don't know why. I couldn't stop watching. At one point, I had the common sense to record my screen so I could have evidence of what was going on. I saw the man's hand go under her blouse and then soon after try to take off her underwear. It was then that I heard her moan, and I literally watched as the man bent Naomi over the edge of the crib. I think it was then that I just tossed the phone aside. I wanted to scream and I wanted to punch something, but I had to keep my composure because my daughter was sleeping. But do you know how helpless I felt in that moment? I wanted to drive back home so badly. I wanted to go back there and hurt him and hurt her, but the only thing that held me back from doing something very stupid was my baby. Was that the reason why she asked me to take the baby along? Was this what happens every time she asked me to take the baby with me? Would she have done it even if our daughter was still at home? My wife and another man were being intimate in my daughter's room, and that was the part that disgusted me the most, to a level that I struggle to actually describe. By the time I picked up my phone again, the room was empty. I honestly didn't know what to do, and I sat down in the car until my daughter woke up. By then, most of the places I was supposed to go to had closed, and I literally only had one errand left that I could run. I don't know why, but I still went ahead to do it. I think I needed something to take my mind off of it because I knew the alternative was me going home, and I was genuinely scared of what might happen if I went before I got my head on right. Eventually, I went back home, and while she was concerned about me getting back home so late, I made up some stupid excuses that she bought. I really wanted to confront her, but I had to use every ounce of my self-control not to because my emotions were way too charged. I waited till she went to sleep, and I sat in the living room until the daytime. This is where I really need help because I'm freaking losing my mind. This was 2 days ago, and I've been struggling not to completely tear into her, especially because I have the advantage of evidence. She noticed the baby monitor yesterday, and I told her that I had just bought it so that she wouldn't suspect that I was onto her. Again, I'm still so disgusted that she did that in our baby's room, and I also don't know how to express how shocking it was to see things play out that way, especially since I had no idea whatsoever that she was being unfaithful. I wouldn't have guessed it in a million years. I think I'm going to confront her about it, but I really want to be assured that's the best move to make. I want to hear what you all have to say because I'm in the worst position to be making logical decisions right now. Everything I do will be completely fueled by emotion, and I want to avoid that. So let loose, even if it's to call me a fool for not rushing back home right away. Edit. Okay, so yes, I might be a fool for not rushing home right away, as many of you are pointing out. But honestly, not only was I not in the right mental place to be confronted with my wife and her affair partner, but I had my daughter with me, and I think it wouldn't have been smart for me to take her into such a dangerous atmosphere. My daughter held me back from doing anything stupid at that moment, and I'm still thankful for that because she could have gotten hurt if things went out of control. Edit 2. So the general consensus seems to be that I should confront her already and stop wasting time. So yes, that's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to do it tomorrow morning. I can't keep this inside me for any longer. And I also saw some people saying that I should check her phone, but that part will be hard. Her smartphone is almost always on her. I think it is better for me to come at her straight, so that's what I'll do. Just when you thought parenting was all about diapers and midnight feeds, bam! Isn't it ironic how a simple device meant to ensure your baby's safety ended up revealing a plot twist worthy of a suspense thriller? Parenthood throws curveballs. But I bet catching your wife and another man in your daughter's room via a baby monitor wasn't on the parenting manual. And of all places, she chooses the baby's room? Really? I feel like a baby room gives more exhausted, covered in baby barf, and hasn't showered in a week vibes. Not getting down and dirty with a stranger. Different strokes for different folks, I suppose. Update. So I'm back with an update on the story where I caught my wife cheating on the baby monitor. I confronted her about it, and it feels good to have been able to let out all that emotional baggage, but I'm also very hurt by the entire thing. Let me try my best to recap what happened. That morning, when Naomi woke up, I gave her about an hour before I asked her to sit down so that we could talk. She seemed worried and kept asking me if something was wrong, but I didn't say anything in response to that. I started off by telling her when I had bought the baby monitor, but she just looked at me confused. I said nothing, and she only replied with a drawled, "Okay." Then I told her that the baby monitor was already operational on the day that I ran errands. She still looked at me confused, and I really didn't want to say anything. I was simply just looking at her, and I could see the exact moment that she mentally recollected what happened that day. She jumped up slightly in her seat out of shock and covered her mouth. We sat there, her mouth covered like that, for probably a full minute. I could see that she was struggling trying to figure out what to say, but I really didn't want to give her the opportunity to rehearse something, so I asked her, "Why did you cheat on me with that guy?" She started to cry, and she kept trying to speak through it, which was making her entirely unintelligible. I asked the question again, and the same thing happened. She didn't have a real answer to that question, quite obviously. She couldn't use the female favorite, "You were never around," because I was always around. I continued my question, and I asked her who the man was. At that point, she started to sob even louder, and it was pissing me off. This went on for almost 10 minutes before she finally started to calm down. I asked the question again, and it took her 2 minutes of shaking and burying her head in her palms before she spoke. "He's nobody important." "He was important enough to be able to get into your panties." "He's just some guy who came by the store. He wanted to buy flowers for his..." I already knew what the next word was, but I waited for her to finish. "For his wife." I laughed at that because not only was she cheating on me with nobody in my daughter's room, but she was also messing around with a married man as a married woman herself. It actually disgusted me. There's no other word that I can use to describe it. I asked her what his name was. First, she said she didn't know, but I told her that that was a lie. I knew that she knew at least his first name, if not both names. Eventually, she told me his name, and I made a very solid mental note of that. Let's call him John Carpenter, for fun. It was a more unique name than that, though. Then, the last question I asked was, why did you have to do something so disgusting in our daughter's room? Do you have no morals? I mean, obviously not, but I still had to ask her. It was infuriating every time I thought about it. She didn't say anything, and I was honestly shocked by the next thing that she said, and it is still as bafflingly stupid now as it was then. You didn't even wait for me to say yes to a baby monitor." I blew up at her. "So now it's my fault? Because if I didn't buy the baby monitor, you would still be able to have sex with a man in our daughter's room right against her crib? I am the villain because you were cheating with somebody who just happened to buy flowers in your store, a man with a wife, and you're boiling this down to me buying a baby monitor without asking you? You're pathetic." Yeah, after that, she started to sob again, and I felt a lot better. I didn't feel back to normal because it's hard to feel okay again so quickly after something like what I had gone through goes down, but yeah, it felt like some weight off my shoulders. For now, I've kicked Naomi out of the house, and I don't know how to proceed. I know divorce is a must, but somehow, it really isn't enough for me. I need to do more and hurt her beyond that. I just need help figuring out the best way I can potentially do that, so I'm open to all the suggestions that I can get. It's absolutely not your fault, OP. Her trying to blame you for her choices is like blaming the weatherman for a hurricane. It's her own storm to deal with. Right now, focus on securing your own peace of mind and legally protecting your interests. And hey, maybe considering upgrading that baby monitor to one that detects lies. You might get a kick out of it. In all seriousness, take care of yourself and your kid. Surround yourself with supportive people, and remember that time and a good lawyer are your best allies right now. Keep your chin up. You'll get through this. Update 2. I'm back, months after the fact, and I'm the happiest that I've been in a very long time. I was the guy who made the post about my wife Naomi, who I caught cheating on me thanks to a baby monitor that I bought. I'm glad to bring you all one new update, and what should be the final one in this entire story. I knew that I wanted to hurt Naomi badly, so I read through all the comments on my previous post, and I took my sweet time to formulate a plan. The first thing that I went for was the divorce. That was easy. My close friend's wife is a divorce attorney, and she's freaking good at what she does, so I enlisted her services the same day that I confronted Naomi. I had the video evidence for her cheating, and I was told that it was going to come in useful for the trial. The fact that she had to ask me to take the baby that day also showed that she had planned to cheat, and it was very likely not the first time either. When the divorce papers were ready, I specifically gave out Naomi's work address, which is that same corner shop that I lent to her to use for her business. I wanted her to be embarrassed, and while I wasn't there to watch her get served, I hoped that it was a bad look for her and for the customers that must have been there at the time. She called me the same day that she was served, begging that we talk things over. I told her there was literally nothing for us to talk about because she wouldn't have anything more to say to me than several sorries, and that was the last thing I wanted to hear. When it was time for the divorce proceedings to begin, the first thing that her lawyer wanted to go for was the store. Its ownership transferred to me after my uncle died, and that was the asset that she was fighting tooth and nail for. We had a car, though not a fantastic one, and we rented an apartment. That was clearly the most valuable thing we owned between the two of us, and I think that was very clear to the judge as well. In fact, that was the one thing that I knew I had to have. My lawyer, bless her soul, really drove home not only how disgusting my wife cheating so soon after having our first child was, but all the other aspects that made it worse, like the location, the premeditation, the fact that this probably wasn't the first time. She said that giving her that corner store would be like rewarding her bad behavior, and that wouldn't set a good example. End of the day, I got it all, though I gave up the car since I was keeping the apartment. The judge said that it would help with coming to pick up or drop off the child. The custody part didn't go as nicely as I would have wanted since we ended up with joint custody, but it's fine. I also don't need to pay her a dime because thankfully, in my state, her infidelity was allowed to play a major part in the judgment. Here's the part that was finally able to heal my wounds. Remember John Carpenter? The man that my ex-wife cheated on me with? I found him on Facebook. It took me 2 minutes to find his wife, and I messaged her. I explained the whole situation, including the fact that I had explicit footage of her husband and my wife. And she said she was interested in seeing it since she didn't believe me at first. She certainly believed me after. I had to do a lot of consoling, but it seems like things are going to hit the rocks on that side of the sea, and that makes me happy. Poor her, though. She'll end up better off eventually, at least, like I have. The next thing was letting my ex-wife know that she had 30 days to vacate the store. I walked into the store and told her this face-to-face, over a month after we divorced, because I wanted her to let her guard down, and it worked beautifully. She cried and even offered to start paying rent for her spot, but I said no. My eventual plan was to rent the place out, but I absolutely refused to make her my tenant. Nah, I needed to make sure that her lovely shop was no more. Sure, she could carry her brand elsewhere, but at least then she'd need to pay a lot to make it work, and that is fine by me. As I type this, the store is vacant and I'm looking for a proper paying tenant. Her Instagram page still says that the store is closed indefinitely for renovation, but I'm glad that I know that it's a lie. She's trying to save face, but it's not working very well, as it is now very evident that the physical location is no more. She's called me about 3 times in the past month simply to ask me to forgive her and let her use the store again, but I'm not swaying on that. Not at all. And it makes me glad. This is really the happiest I've been in a while, and it sucks it has to come through revenge, but it is what it is. I'm glad I got to hit back at her in the end, and I'm glad it is hurting her just a fraction of the amount that it hurt me. Wow, you've really turned the tables on Naomi with surgical precision, OP. Serving divorce papers at her own workplace? That's what we like to see. As for the store turning down her offer to pay rent was a power move. I can almost hear the evil landlord laugh echoing through the empty storefront. Her Instagram renovation excuse is classic, like saying a sinking ship is just a brief dip underwater for maintenance. It's good to hear you're finding closure, even if it's through unconventional means. Just remember, living well is the best revenge. And hey, if you need help finding the proper paying tenant, maybe consider someone who really values privacy in their business affairs. What do you think? Have you found pleasure in revenge? Let us know in the comments below. And thank you for joining us today on Our Space. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our next video. Until next time.